In this lesson, we're going to be looking at non-isosceles trapezoids and isosceles trapezoids. So here's some of the properties. Non-isosceles trapezoids, they have, well, they look like this, some of them. The key things, though, are that only one pair of opposite sides are parallel. So you have these two lines that are parallel. And the consecutive angles between parallel lines are supplementary. So the consecutive angles would be like this one here and this one. Those two are consecutive and are supplementary, so they'll add up to 180 degrees, and these two would as well. Isosceles trapezoids have the same properties as non-isosceles trapezoids plus these four extra. So non-parallel sides, that's these two, these are called legs, they are congruent, so they're the same length. Diagonals are also congruent, so these two little guys here are congruent. The base angles are congruent, so this angle would be congruent to this one, and this angle is congruent to this one. And then opposite angles are supplementary. So this one and this one would add up to 180, and this angle and this angle would add up to 180. So knowing those things, we can find some missing values here on these trapezoids. So for number one, we're looking here at the measure of angle K and the measure of angle M. So remember that K and L, those are supplementary. So if L is 51, then K would be 180 minus 51, and that is 129 degrees. Measure M would be 180 minus 87. So 180 minus 87, looks like a 6. 180 minus 87 is 93 degrees. So you're just using some of these rules up here in order to find these values. Number two, measure of angle C. That would be supplementary to the measure of angle B. So this one would be 180 minus 31, and that is 149. And then for the measure of angle D, 180 minus 62 is 118. And then we get some algebra here. We're going to solve for x. So here's our parallel lines. So we know that 8x plus 6 plus 54 degrees is going to equal 180. So we have 8x plus 6 plus 54 equals 180. So we would subtract, let's see, if we add 68 or 6 and 54, that gives us 8x plus 60 equals 180, and then subtract your 60 from both sides, and we get 8x equals 120. Divide both sides by 8, and x equals 15. So doing a little algebra here based on these rules. The measure of angle R for number 4, well, angle R and angle Q add up to 180 degrees. So we would have 12x plus 3 plus 7x minus 13. That would equal 180. So we would have, let's see, 19x plus 13 minus 13, that's 0. So 19x equals 180. And when you, hold on, we made a mistake here. 19x, I can't read my own writing. This is a 3 and this is a minus 13. So this is 19x minus 10. That equals 180. And then from there, we would add our 10, and 19x equals 190. Divide both sides by 19, and we get x equals 10. Okay. For number 5, it tells us that DEFG is an isosceles trapezoid. So the length DG, that's this one here, is congruent. Remember, these legs are congruent, so DG would be congruent to EF. And DF, this is the diagonals, and a diagonal, and the diagonals are congruent, so DF would be congruent to EG. Okay, Number 6, TUVW is an isosceles trapezoid. So the measure of angle T, this one here, would be congruent to angle U. And the measure of angle V, this little guy here, would be congruent to W, angle W. Okay, number 7, we know that this measure here of angle P is 112, so we can find all these other angles because we know that these angles, P and S, are supplementary. Q and R are also supplementary. So the measure of angle Q would be, well, let's find the measure of angle S first. We know that S would be 180 minus 112, which is 68. So this one is 68 degrees. Once we know that, well, then we know that angle R is also 68 degrees. I don't know why I went in reverse here, because the measure of angle Q is the same as the measure of angle P, which is 112 degrees. Okay. Number 8. X and W are the same, so W would be 47 degrees. The measure of angle Y you can figure out by doing 180 minus 47, since they're supplementary. That would be 133, which means that angle Z is also 133. So these trapezoids aren't so bad, right? Okay, number 9. If MNOP is an isosceles trapezoid, MP is 16x minus 13, NO is 9x plus 8, and then we know that PN is 5y minus or plus 19, and MO is 12y minus 37. Solve for x and y. So let's start with our x's. We know that MP is congruent to NO based on our isosceles triangle properties. So that means that 16x minus 13 is going to equal 9x plus 8. And now you can solve for x. So let's just get 8 over here. Well, actually, let's do it the other way. I like positive numbers better. Let's move our 9x over here. So we'll subtract 9x from both sides, and we'll add 13 to both sides. And we end up with, let's see, 7x equals 21. Divide both sides by 7, and you get x equals 3. So there's our x. And to find our y, we know that this diagonal is congruent to this diagonal. So Pn is 5y plus 19. And we're going to set that equal to MO, which is 12y minus 37. And we'll solve for those. So if we subtract 5y from both sides, and then add 37 to both sides, we end up with 56 equals 7y. Divide both sides by 7, and we get y equals 8. Okay, these next few, we're looking at the angles here. So if ABCD is an isosceles trapezoid, find each missing angle. Well, we know that these angles are congruent. So 2x plus 27 would equal 5x minus 12. So first we have to find out what x is. Minus 2x, and we'll add 12. That gives us, let's see, this is 3x, and this is 39. So divide both sides by 3, and x equals 13. So if x equals 13, we can find all these different angles. So let's start with angle D, since we know that it's 2x plus 27. So we would just take our x, 13, and plug it in there, and add 27. So 2 times 13 is 26, And 26 plus 27 is, let's see, what are we looking at? This is angle D, right? So angle D, 26 plus 27 is 53 degrees. Angle C is congruent to angle D, so you don't even have to do the extra algebra. Hopefully you would end up with the same thing, 53 degrees. And then we can find measure A and B. Those two are congruent. We can find those by taking 180 and subtracting 53. So 180 minus 53 is 127. And those are both 127 degrees. Okay, so the rest of these are just like that. And so it should be pretty straightforward. Just remember that in an isosceles triangle, an isosceles trapezoid, you have congruent angles, and you also have congruent legs, and you have congruent diagonals, and that will help you out.